Before I can review a Toyota Camry, there's something that needs to be done. Right, now that we've got that out of the way, on with the show. The Toyota Camry has been on Australian roads for nearly 40 years, and this current version dates back to 2017, although the model it replaced does look quite similar to it, so it feels like it's been around for a bit longer. But credit where it's due, it has seen off the likes of the Ford Mondeo, Ford Falcon and Holden Commodore as the fleet car of choice. So you hear Camry, you probably straight away think of taxi, Uber or rental car. They usually look pretty bland. But I have to say this particular model, which is a mid-range SX Hybrid in its feverish red paint job and shiny black alloys, actually looks pretty good. The front end of the Camry is pretty busy. There's a lot going on. We've got bits of grille poking out and these little inserts here and a bit of fake grille down there. But I do like the LEDs. They've got built-in daytime running lights as well. Side on, and you can see that Toyota really are sticking to a traditional sedan shape for the Camry, resisting the urge to turn it into a coupe like so many of Toyota's rivals are. And this car's black shiny alloys really do contrast very nicely with the red paint job. The rear boot lid is the only bit of sheet metal that was carried over from the previous Camry, and I'm not really crazy about its raised up, squared off look that's only further accentuated here with this car's lip spoiler. I just think the Mazda 6 looks far sleeker than this. But I do like the rear light clusters. They've got claw-shaped LEDs inside them. They look pretty good, but the Camry showstopper piece under the not powered boot lid, but it is very springy, so it opens up on its own, is a 524 litre storage space, which is massive. It goes all the way back. You actually can't see the end of it there. It is so big, bigger than just about any car you care to name, and that is the reason why every rental car, cab and Uber is a Camry. This SX model Camry also scores twin exhausts and this little black strip here that doesn't really do anything other than look cool. Under the rather large bonnet is the Toyota Camry's famous hybrid powertrain, which sees a 2.5 litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder petrol engine mated to an electric motor, and together they output a combined total of 160 kilowatts of power and 221 newton meters of torque. It's very fuel efficient, drinking just 4.7 litres per 100 kilometres on a combined cycle. I've been getting around about 6.1, probably because I'm a little bit lead-footed. Power is driven to the front wheels only via a continuously variable transmission. I do have to wonder what the purpose of this little bit here is. The Corolla had it last week as well. Is it aerodynamics? I don't know. The interior of the Camry feels immediately familiar, and as it would to anyone who's been in a taxi or an Uber in the last several years. But that's not to say that it's bad. It looks quite attractive, and there's nice soft touch materials throughout the cabin. We've got a lot of stitching here, but the actual materials themselves don't feel particularly premium, and you do get the feeling that they're here more because they're easy to wipe down than actually giving a feel of luxury. Like all Toyotas, the center console screen, which is nice and big, it's a really good size, in fact, unfortunately contains Toyota's archaic software on it, which is in desperate need of updating. It really does feel an entire generation behind just about every other car maker out there. The maps don't look great, the whole system's a bit slow and laggy, and it's just not a very pleasant system to use at all. But the good news is there is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, although they are not wireless. The middle of the console gets this kind of upside down tear-shaped form, and that has the climate controls in it, and they're pretty easy to use. We've got one USB output for the front up here, which is probably not quite enough, to be honest, and a tray here to put your phone on, which actually has a little sliding action that reveals another hidden compartment underneath that. A couple of cup holders, we've got a good feeling gear shifter. The drive mode controls for Eco, Normal and Sport are down here, along with the EV mode, allowing you to run in full electric mode while there is sufficient charge in the battery. And then probably the world's largest center console bin. It is really huge. It's got a nice soft lid on it, but again, feels a little bit cheap. The instrument cluster with its two big round dials actually feels a little bit American to me. I seem to remember that maybe it was the Ford Taurus or the Ford 500 that had a similar cluster design as this, but it does actually look pretty good. So we've got one big round dial here showing you energy consumption, and then the right hand side is your analog speedometer. We've got a center screen which you can go through a number of different display options. I just keep it on my speedo because that's the easiest one for me to look at. The steering wheel, not really a hell of a lot to say about that. It's very nice, has a couple of paddle shifters on the back here for when you're running in petrol mode. It has a leather wrap on it with some stitching. The buttons feel well made and solid. In fact, that actually goes for everything about the Camry. It just feels solid and well made. The seats are leather accented and they're actually very comfortable. The driver gets 8 ways of electric adjustment with lumbar support, manual adjustment only for the front passenger. And look, if I was going to be a professional driver behind the wheel all day of this car, I think I'd actually be quite comfortable. The seating position is just a little high in the cabin for me though, but I can see to the front corners of the bonnet, which is good. And there's plenty of headroom, great visibility in every direction actually, including in the blind spots. But to help with that also, there is blind spot monitoring in the wing mirrors and good visibility through the rear vision mirror to the back window there, although there is a tissue box partially obscuring my view. The back seat of the Camry is another one of its party tricks because there is so much room in here. I mean, this is a car that has a massive boot, plenty of room in the front, and backseat passengers not short of room at all. So I'm 190 centimeters tall and I'm sitting behind my own seating position, nowhere near the seat in front. This is really one of the most comfortable back seats I've sat in for that reason. Although a little short on headroom though, disappointingly. I can feel my hair touching the ceiling. There's 2 USBs for the rear seat passengers, and rear seat passengers also get an armrest with cup holders, and in certain select Camrys, owners can choose to have a tissue box on the back parcel shelf. Eucalyptus. Now, being a hybrid, things start off pretty quietly, but put your foot down even just a little bit and that petrol engine kicks in. But this is a really quiet and refined cabin, so you barely notice it coming on at all. It's not really the sort of car you're going to be fanging around a country mountain road on, you know, swooping bends at high speed. It's not really designed for that. But around town, it's really good. And it certainly doesn't feel underpowered in any way. Early hybrids really were quite underwhelming to drive, whereas they've really perfected it now, and the combination of electric and petrol motors working together actually works really well. So all up, it is very pleasant to drive the Camry. It's just a bit unremarkable. And you're not really turning any heads on the street driving one of these. It's pretty anonymous. Something that does remind me of late night taxi rides home though is watching the power gauge here on the left-hand side of the dash do its thing, going backwards and forwards from charge to eco to power. It moves a lot, depending on how much throttle you're giving the car. And I don't know, just the sight of that just reminds me of sitting in the back of a taxi not feeling particularly well at 2 a.m. Not that that happens very often, but if it was to happen. Okay, so we're going into a tunnel here where the speed limit is 80 k's an hour. So just putting my foot down a little bit as the speed limit increases, navigating around some traffic here, and yeah, the response is really good. So there are 3 drive modes: Eco, Normal and Sport. Let's see how we go with Eco. And straight away, I can feel the power drop off a little bit. Into Sport mode. And oh yes, I can feel it drop down. Well, I was going to say drop down a gear, but there are no gears because it's a CVT. But it certainly is allowing the engine to rev a little more freely and use more petrol. And it's a bit noisier too. Let's drop back down to normal, and that feels a bit more comfortable. This mid-spec Camry gets a full complement of Toyota Sense safety gear, so you're really wanting for nothing, as you can see on the list on the screen. It's pretty well equipped. We do get parking sensors, although I think they might have been adjusted in this particular car so they're not overly sensitive. You've really got to be very close to an object before they start beeping. The one thing that is driving me a little bit crazy though is that there have been a number of times when this car seems to think I'm about to have a head-on collision with another car, and that has just not been the case at all, and it started beeping very loudly at me. Fortunately, it doesn't automatically slam on the brakes, as what happened with a Kia I once drove, but it's disconcerting nonetheless. The Camry is one of the last of its kind. There aren't too many affordable mid-size sedans left, and rumour has it the Mazda 6 is on the way out too. So if you can see beyond the taxi, Uber, rental car stigma, you'll find that the Toyota Camry is actually a very good, affordable, practical alternative to an SUV.